is I was long Bitcoin based on, if we look at this chart, right? So we had this down sloping trend line. And I think it's important for us to say is like you can have a macro, bigger picture view that something could happen. And then you can have an even bigger macro, right? So in general, I've been very skeptical that we're in a new bull market, but that doesn't mean that when the charts are telling me we're going to have a pop, I'm not going to go long, right? And so that's exactly what I did. And again, even though I'm kind of midterm questioning whether or not this is a new bull market, I'm also long-term insanely bullish. And I think that's the same way you are. So it's all about time frame, folks. And again, we had this down-sloping trend line. Once we got above it, that was a short-term breakout. And I went long and then sold half the position with members at 31,000, half at 34. And then I actually got off a short just above 35,000. Now it was back on the 24th when we just peaked above 35,000. So I'm slightly short, a very small kind of dip your toe in the water. This morning, I just exited the Cardano long position. I talked about this with you guys about how you had this wedge pattern. We broke out. We went right up to this trend line. So for me, it becomes kind of a 50-50 now. So I said, you know what? Once it's a gamble and it's a 50-50 probability, sure, it could go higher, but I'm not going to be greedy about it. And I exited there. I still am holding a little bit of Litecoin. It is slightly in the money here. I'm thinking you might get one pop here. But again, I will say this, I'm starting to also look to short things. I think Chainlink is getting a little overdone to the upside. So again, it's being a trader's mentality, but a trader can make money in any market. And here's a great example. This trend line here starts in that first initial dip after, I think this was FTX. This high connected to this high comes right through here. And that's really what we're bubbling up against. So that's right around that 35,000 level. And so that's resistance. But my big question is this. To me, this run-up is purely based on speculation or anticipation, maybe is the better word, that we're going to get that spot ETF. So people are buying on the rumor, essentially, the pre-news. And the question is, when we get that news, we could easily see a pop higher, but I wonder if it doesn't become a sell after the news is already out there. So let's say we pop up to even 40,000 and wick up there. Do we reverse? And I'd love to have your input on this. Is like, what are your thoughts on, do you agree that this is a speculative move on the ETF? And then when we get that ETF, which I think we both agree we will get at some point, what does price do after that? I think what's interesting too is that if you look at November, we know that November, like you said, has been a key month historically, and that's when Bitcoin topped in 2021, right? And so you also kind of draw that conclusion and saying, okay, what if we got an ETF announcement in November? You see this huge pop up because you will get chasers, right? The question is, does it hold? And so imagine if we do that big kind of pop, let's say into the 40s, and then it just wicks, and then you have a new top shorter term before you start trading down. And again, I don't know if that will happen, but it is kind of worth seeing. And let me just show my chart here. This would be my kind of most bullish case for Bitcoin. Take the kind of this high from 2019 and connect it through the lows of the bull market. And if we drag that across, you have kind of this beautiful little trend line going right through these lows of the bull market. And that's right around 47,000. And again, that to me would be like spot ETF approved, and it just pops crazy on this crazy buying, like, oh my goodness. And then I could see that being a short-term high on the market. I would probably look to add aggressively to my short if it popped up there that high.
Imagine Bitcoin is a roller coaster, and we're about to hit a loop. Crypto analyst CryptoCon is the guy who shouts, hold on tight. He's seeing a golden cross on Bitcoin's daily chart. A golden cross is when the 50-day moving average MA zooms past the 200-day MA. It's like the ultimate buy signal, a sign that Bitcoin might go on a wild bull run. But hold your horses. CryptoCon thinks we might have a short ride downwards first. He's basing this on Bitcoin's history with golden crosses. Usually, it dips around 8%. So if this pattern holds, we could see Bitcoin at around $31,600. But here's where it gets interesting. After the dip, CryptoCon expects Bitcoin to go all bull run. He says history shows that after 2 out of 7 golden crosses, Bitcoin soared. At the time of writing, Bitcoin had a little stumble. It was down 0.09% at $34,290.20. A drop from its recent high at $34,843.94. Now meet the crypto analyst who thinks Bitcoin is on a roller coaster, and it's going down, way down, like to $8,000 down. This analyst, Holy Prophet, first dropped this prediction when Bitcoin was cozy at $30,000. Back then, they said, nah, it won't go past $31,000. Now, even though Bitcoin did hop up Holy Prophet isn't convinced. They believe this is a bull trap, a sneaky trick. They think Bitcoin's headed down for a big drop. Despite some backlash from Bitcoin fans, Holy Prophet is standing their ground. Even when Bitcoin danced past $35,000, they still say it's going to $8,000. But there's a twist. Holy Prophet's model suggests this might be where the drop begins. So the crypto analyst says, it's time to exit bull trades. In other words, maybe the roller coaster is about to take a wild turn down. So Bitcoin is on a roller coaster with some experts shouting bull and others bear. Will it be a thrilling ascent or a terrifying drop? The crypto ride continues. Let's continue our discussion with Gareth.
I honestly think it's even a little extended, but the more it kind of chops sideways, the more I think that it could go up here a little bit further. But that would be kind of that would be like the roses, like everything coming up roses for it. Like if everything was just perfectly aligned, maybe if the news hit when there was light volume and it really got that crazy momentum, I could see that potentially happening. The other thing I wanted to show you on Bitcoin dominance here, I know you look at this all the time, but we've talked about our targets on Bitcoin dominance and how they coexist here. And you're actually not that far away. This is the weekly Bitcoin dominance chart. And I think you're still in the camp that we're probably going to see this like 57, 58 level percent-wise on dominance. And look at the three trend lines from the low of 2018 through this area here, and then this pivot low and this downsloping level. And they're all converging right at that level. And investors, and if you're watching this, I think you probably follow us enough to know this, but you just want to be careful when that news hits, not jumping on the bandwagon at that point. Like really, Bitcoin's already had a substantial move from 25 now to 35. If it goes up to 41, 42, that's probably based on what you're showing on Ethereum and what happened there. You have to be a little careful because sell the news is a legit thing. You see it in stocks all the time. You see it in commodities. Like with commodities, for instance, just using like oil, oil topped recently when OPEC actually cut production, right? It was kind of the run up into everyone knowing they were going to cut production. They cut production and then that was the high. So just be aware of that. Again, it depends on your time horizon, obviously. Is it going to matter in 10 years if you went in long 41 versus 35? Probably not that much. But at least in the short term, it is important to remember. Interesting chart here on the S&P. So the S&P, right, we have this level here, and I'll just refresh here. So you have this pivot high, and this is something we pierced on Friday, but we've recaptured today. So we're right into this really big support area on the S&P or the spiders, which is right around this 410 level. So I'm really following this. If we break this, we're headed all the way to 400 on the SPY, which would basically be 4,000 or sub 4,000 on the S&P. But I think you have this window where yields may have topped at 5%. If they topped and we do start to see the 10-year coming in, then you can easily see the potential for the markets to bounce into year end on that narrative. I think a couple things have to happen. The Fed is on Wednesday. They have to not be brutal to the markets. They have to leave the door open for maybe pausing and being totally done. The next would be Apple earnings on Thursday after the bell. They have to be not horrendous, right? And then Friday morning is the jobs report, and we've seen such good jobs numbers, meaning strong jobs numbers. If we could get one that's just a little weak, I think you have a top, and I think the markets actually rally on the back of that, at least in the near term.
Global asset management firm AllianceBernstein's research arm expects the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to approve its first spot Bitcoin exchange-traded fund, ETF, in early January 2024. Noting that the regulator has been actively responding with edits/comments on the ETF applications, the firm's analysts said, the probability of an approval by the January 10 due date looks highly likely. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more daily updates. Remember, knowledge is power, and we're here to empower you on your financial journey. Until next time, happy investing.